back to another episode of Meet the Creatives. Today I am joined by Lisa Smith, Executive Creative Director at Jones Knowles Ritchie, or JKR as the cool kids say. Welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Super excited to be here and to have a chat this afternoon.
When Leland Matchmeyer told me that you were like I think he said you're one of his favorite people in the world. I was like, I need to, because people had recommended I speak to you before, and I've always been kind of a JKR fanboy over the years. And I'm talking like early on, like even before you got there, like when they did the Budweiser work with like Malika and stuff like that. But yeah, I've always loved JKR. And then when Lee mentioned about his time working with you, and I think that he talked about your USA Today case study with Wolf Owens. He was really like putting you on the last episode. So
that's so cool. Oh my God, I don't think I've listened to it, so now I want to listen to it. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. Leland is very special. I loved working with him.
Yes, probably the smartest guy I know, but definitely the best hair in design, male or female. I don't know what the secret is. I don't know if he does like the curly girl method or like what's going on. There's some sort of outside help there. So
I have pretty big hair. It's tied up today, so probably maybe Leland and I were always competing for big hair days.
Yes, that's good. My hair is, I'm having a pretty good hair day today, so it's good. All right, so let's get into it. Thank you for being here. I listened to the first half, admittedly, of this thing I found on YouTube of you from like 5 years ago. And it was talking about how you made, quote, a lot of fucking tea was like your first job. And then, and then also too that you liked photography, that part of your major was photography.
Yeah.
And I've befriended recently Mary Giuliano. And I want to like work with her. I want to be like a second shooter and do those cool like Dunkin' Donuts, you know what I'm saying? Kind of get the chance to work with all my favorite agencies. So
yeah. Mari connects us all. I mean, Mari, she works for a lot of New York agencies, but yeah, we work with her a lot at Chobani, and she shot all of the BK employees with me on the recent rebrand, which was her energy is extra, which I love.
Yes. Yeah, she's coming on the show. She's just been so busy. She's been out in LA and everything. And it's funny because when I first got into like the branding space, I fell in love with logos and all of that. But I think recently I've recognized in my heart of hearts that I'm a photographer, but I also have a love of branding. So then when my friend Josh showed me Mari's work, I was like, I have to meet her. So it's going to be good. Maybe one day that'll be my Trojan horse, my way of getting to work with JKR. But yeah, so tell me about the beginning. How'd you get into this thing?
It's so funny that you found a video where I talked about lots of cups of tea. And I think back maybe a long while ago, I did have a deck when people used to ask me what was my journey. And I used to have these Pantone chips on the first slide of all the different color tints of brown for the different shades of tea, because that was my first boss, John Ellery, had that Pantone chart stuck in the kitchen. And I made a lot of cups of tea, but that isn't how it all started. It actually, prior to that, I think I graduated back in 2000. I went to a college in the southwest of England called Bath. Probably people have heard of that city before, but the art college there, not the university. Very important. It was the art college because we were in a crazy halls of residence that was like in a half semicircle, and you could like run back and forth, and you get to mix with all the artists and the ceramicists and all the different creatives. And I think I always loved being around all different types of creatives from the very beginning. And yeah, that's where I did a lot more. Like my work was very multidisciplinary back then. I was always like filming or taking photographs, and was learning about graphic design, but definitely not in the Leland Mashmeyer way of like the geeky. He knows everything about design history.
Capital D design.
I kind of skipped all of that and was equally into kind of more art and photographers and illustrators and textiles and all of the different things which I think influenced my work. But yeah, I found myself taking amazing photos, putting a small piece of type at the bottom, and making these posters, and sort of ending up back in London, where I'm just from outside London, trying to get a job back in 2000, I think, it was when I graduated. And, like every student at that point, you're sending hundreds of different letters, trying to find a foot in, getting different internships. And I got my first internship with a shop called Radley Yelder, who was an annual report. They designed annual reports. They were a thing, believe it or not.
I caught the tail end of it. Yeah.
And actually, what was interesting on the creative end of an annual report was the first half was always about storytelling, and the second half was always about typesetting, like hard facts and figures. And as you're kind of learn years later, when I designed USA Today newspaper, I'm super into hardcore typesetting and grids and systems and stuff like that. So I can really geek out on that stuff. So hey, it was a perfect balance. It was.
I have all the books. I just haven't necessarily, like, I have. Wait, hold on. I'll pull it up here. See, like, I have, like, I have like the books, and it looks cool, and I like it, but I am still in the infancy of my grid modular. I want to be that guy though. I want to be like that Michael Beirut, Yale, Swiss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One day.
I mean, I was so lucky because as I said, I did more photography. So then I ended up in a place that was, I mean, honestly, I walked onto the floor. I was one of the only women with about 100 guys who were all working on different annual reports. It felt little factory-esque. They're super creative. They actually won lots of awards for their work. But I was a little bit out of place. And by complete like circumstances, one of the creative directors there was my primary art school teacher's son. And he just took it upon himself to go, Lisa, what are you doing here? Can I look at your portfolio? Let's look at your work. And I'm going to help you, tell you a bit more about where I think the right places would be for you to go and work. So use this internship, but I'm going to help you kind of like point you in the direction. So he looked at my book. It was all photography. He was like, you love Martin Parr, don't you? I was like, yes, he's my hero. And he's like, you have to go and see Browns. And I was like, Browns? I was like, I actually didn't really know much about them back then. And they were 3 gentlemen that were all ex-Addison, which was annual report world too, that had all set up their own independent agency to do more kind of things that they were passionate about, whether that was annual reports or whether that on the other end of the spectrum was art books for photographers. And I was like, oh my God, that, and even all their identity stuff that was in between, I was
are they still around?
Oh yeah, they are. Browns.
Can I go work for them? Are they in New York?
No, he's based in London, John Ellery, okay. And yeah, does beautiful work. He's part artist, part designer, and I think, yeah, we shared some of the same passions. But I went to see him with my portfolio, and he opened my book and he looked through it, and he was just like, oh my God, there's like rivers running through your type, there's this, there's that. And I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to get an internship at Browns. And then I was like walking over Tower Bridge, like feeling a bit Bridget Jones, like all by myself, and nothing's ever going to happen for me. And this is like a disaster.
I feel that way right now.
And doing that back when you had like those block cell phones, I got a call and it was like, can you come back tomorrow and meet the other 2 partners? They'd love to meet you before we would give you an internship. And I met them. And yeah, really, that recommendation and them giving me an opportunity to do an internship was the beginning of a journey. But I mean, I interned for them for nearly 6 months. It just kept getting extended. And I did everything from like, oh, they were having an art show in their space and I would stick stickers on the little booklets. I mean, I would help in any way I could. I actually wasn't that computer literate, because back then, 1, Apple computers were still so expensive. So a lot of us didn't own them or have them. 2, I think even at college, we shared like 15 Macs for a school, like a year of 50 students or something. So it was like, I wasn't as proficient and fluent as I should have been or could have been. But one of the creative directors there took a bit of we spent time, and he used to give me like tips on how to do different things on the computer and how to grid things, how to lay things out, what are X heights, cap heights, hanging points. And every day he would give me different tips, and I still have this notebook. I don't know, it's probably in my loft space actually. It's normally in a desk of every job I've ever had. I have this notebook that is every single thing of how to do, well, it was Quark Express back then, but actually maybe even it went into InDesign and it was freehand and but like how, like almost my own guide of how to use the computer and the
Oh my God,
shortcut
so
keys
cool.
and all of these types of things. And when he would mark up my layouts, I'd keep the printout. I'd shown it to other students and designers over the years and go, this is an X height, this is how it should hang. And it was just, yeah, that was incredible. And it was really like a baptism of fire taking that internship, because I got asked to design a little booklet for a paper company called Munkin. And honestly, I didn't even like opening up a program. It just all felt like I didn't know how to do anything. So I'd have
Yeah.
to ask everyone for their help.
Did you feel like you were going to get fired the whole time?
Oh, the whole time. And then coming up to those 6 months end. And I, you know, it was an interesting thing because my mum had always said, make yourself so like available that they just wouldn't be able to imagine the day that you wouldn't be there to help them. So the cups of tea and the sticking on the leaflets are no joke. I was like, I will do anything, like absolutely anything, apart from probably clean the bathrooms or whatever. But I was like, I want to be as helpful and as useful, and I want to learn, and I want to be here. This is so exciting. And but after 6 months, my internship was coming to an end, and they were having a party for a new designer that they'd hired, a senior designer, and it was going to be my farewell party. And
you just gave me so much PTSD. I know that feeling so
yeah,
much.
but they gave me, there was a little twist in this story. They gave me a brown paper wrappered box and handed it to me, and they were all standing around the room, and Browns was probably maybe like 15, 20 people at this time, and they were standing around, and I opened it and it was my business cards, and they gave me a job.
What? That's so cute.
And so I cried a lot. I am a big crier, as anyone who knows, who's worked with me. I'm not very good with good feedback or bad feedback. I just cry regardless.
That's good to know. I'm a little bit more emotional as I gotten older. I never cried before I was like 26. Now I'm 30 and I can't stop crying of everything. It just throws me completely off.
Yeah, so that was how that all started, and it was amazing. From then on, like my first actual job that they gave me was to design an art book for a photographer, and I got handed an envelope of transparencies to go and scan, and I poured them out on the table, and they were of a sex club in New York, and it was for a Magnum photographer called Susan Masellas, and I was like, oh my goodness, you know, like when you're like still a little young and naive, and it's like men hiding behind like doors, smelling shoes, and it was the full works. But as I got to know who Susan was, she shot the first carnival strippers, I think back in the 60s or 70s, maybe actually the 70s, and she also had shot like Newsweek magazine scapes of like excavated graves in Nicaragua. She'd done a lot for Time magazine and Life and things like that. She was just incredible. And yeah, I made this book with her, and when I saw the pictures and scanned them in, they had like different textures in all the photography. So I said to my boss, could I go into Soho? I want to go and get some textiles and things. And that's the first book that I did with like rubber pages, latex pages, and it was really tactile. And the stories are that September the 11th happened, which and we were meant to be printing the book in actually near Bath, ironically, so sort of back to where I went to college. And Susan had really struggled to get out of New York, and she ended up on a friend's plane that was coming to the UK, and she was covered in dust because she'd been shooting. She was exhausted, she had to sleep quite a lot, but we printed this book together. A lot of the women printers and bookbinders refused to work on it because they thought it was demeaning towards women, but I found the whole book was like super empowering. It was the other way around in my eyes. They were the dominatrixes. They were like governing. They were ruling the roost. I was like, this is badass.
Real feminism.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, and I think that's always been the textiles and the tactility and the illustration and all of that type of stuff has always been in a lot of my work. But also like the print productions, and like love making things that are almost impossible and challenging. And then also always kind of like figuring out there's bridges between, like diversity and being the only woman in the room and and how can we be empowering, and I've never let any of that kind of hold me back, but I advocate for it, obviously. But yeah, that was the beginning. So that's like,
that's perfect. You covered all the bases there. It's amazing. I'm so happy that you shared all that, because I've acquired all these books. I have like this desk. I have all these different things. I have like these cameras. Like I mentioned, like really getting into photography, really getting into design. And recently I've been kind of struggling to, number one, find a home, like design wise or photography wise, and then going back and forth between like what it is like I really want to do. And I think that a lot of people at my stage in the game kind of have this. I'm at like, this is, if I've been at this for 5 years, but if I'm really honest, I've been genuinely only applying myself for like 2 years. The rest of it has kind of been feeling sorry for myself and telling things like the industry doesn't care, but really I just want to go party with my friends. But over like the last 2 years, I've really made a conscious effort to get my shit together. Like I remember back in the day, I interviewed at JKR, and it was just a total train wreck. I had like no business being there, but they were nice enough to have me. So, but no, everyone was
more than welcome.
Yes, they were really cool. I definitely have a couple more ducks to put in a row before I try my hand at that again. But I really have like gotten after it. But and I know this sounds like it's just like me feeling sorry for myself, but I can't help but feel like a lot of people are having this experience too. It was kind of like jarring to go in and out of like freelance positions and stuff like that. And like you're kind of learning the ropes and getting all this experience, right? But then you also kind of get, in my personal experience, I got kind of like jaded by that whole experience of like, oh, like this could work out into something more. And then now I'm at a place where I'm older. I have somewhat like paid my dues in a way, but I am, I don't know.
It's an interesting point you touched on, because if you think
It's like
about
the
it,
John Mayer song. It might be the quarter life crisis.
yeah, my experience was I had to hustle in a way that, from a very inexperienced side, and had to make myself invaluable to the point that it's probably the typical was of that period, a typical like, yes, the intern makes cups of tea, they scan things, they photocopy stuff and blah, blah, blah. And now I think everyone graduates and they're much more proficient in programs and different types of things. And maybe now we're also even going more full circle, because hey, I think the times are getting much more interesting, where we're actually thinking much more about diversity, whether it's diversity ethnically, but also diversity in experience. You had to have gone to college even? Does all any of that really matter? But what you have to do as an agency is make sure you're creating the right conditions so that you can have different people coming in and they can discover who they are. And I think where you're getting at is like, oh, well, am I dedicated enough? Was this the right opportunity? Am I going to be a freelance? Am I committed to this? Like, I mean, I've ended up accidentally curating my career through different passions and things, but I've always, design is the thread that's always carried through it. Even when, I mean, I've worked at where I'm moving, like I worked at moving brands in San Francisco for a bit when I first came to the States, and that was more thinking about making sure everything came to life. We live in living, breathing worlds. I've worked at the Victoria and Albert Museum, so I've helped work with 3D designers on exhibitions and space design, and thought about signage and materials from that. I've like worked on restaurants and hotels here in New York. I've worked obviously in yogurt and more packaging and branding for within a brand. Like I'm always wanting to learn and learn more. Like that has never stopped. Is the curiosity. And probably, I mean, yeah, everybody is different. I'm always like, I love what I do. So it's really driven me in a way that maybe, other people are like, well, I have a life. And it's like, well, yeah, I have a life, but I love what I do. And that's kind of what I do. So I don't really see much of a divide, but I also do really respect other people that come to their jobs and work really fucking hard within the hours of 9 to 6 and figure out their careers within that and still have families and balance and and things like that. I don't think there's any right or wrong in both of those, but navigating, you never know when you're at the beginning where you end up. And my
Yeah.
story, obviously my story is my story. Yours will be different. You'll be like, oh, I wasn't committed those first couple of years, then I tried this out, then this happened, I did
I
this
ended up just being a
podcast.
photographer. I used
Yeah,
my design skills
maybe.
to build my website. On the one hand, I'm like restless and like want to like get a full-time job working at an agency, and on the other hand though too, it's like, no, I'm kind of glad that I've had this sort of winding road with this podcast, because I've gotten the chance, like I know so much about like the Chobani brand and like, you know, all the different stuff about it, and getting to talk to all these people and kind of like fanboy out about all these different things. And I think that there has to be that period of exploration in order to one day get where I'm going. But when I'm in this sort of like transition period, you almost kind of feel like, am I going to be able to sort of land this plane? Because I am wildly passionate about all of these different things. And then I just have these conversations with my parents. So it's like, when are you going to get a full-time job? It's
Don't worry. I remember even at school when I think even when I was like, honestly, I was like 12 and I had the choice between what was home economics, which was cooking back then. It was to do, like computer studies or ceramics. I chose ceramics, and this will sound bad, but my dad was who he was, and he was a little bit more old-fashioned with his way of thinking. And he came to the school and he was like, Lisa needs to learn how to cook. Women need to learn how to cook. And the irony is like my brother is a chocolatier and my mum is an incredible cook. And I probably would have equally put so much effort into culinary. I kind of love it too. Like I imagine I could have gone, it's just which creative door did I want to go through? But because I was
right.
told I had to like cook, I was like, fuck that, I don't want to do that. And so of course I rebelled much more into art. That was my way of rebelling in some and then my mum, I remember when I did in England, you do your before you go to university, you have to do a year in between school and university. It's called an art foundation. It's one of the best things ever. You go to a local college for a year, and you do ceramics and fine art and textiles and photography and typography and jewelry making. For the first 8 months, I was like in heaven. I was like, I want to do all of this. But then you had to pick a lane. And I went to my mum and like, I'm going to do fine art. And she was like, no. You are going to go and do the one that will pay you salary and that you will leave home one day. And so of course I took graphic design. But yeah. It's not like that's bigger fame and fortune, but hey, it's like I love it. Like there's so much you can do, all of those things that you're passionate about, the photography, the grid systems, it all comes together in design. That's the beauty. It's like design is the gravity of where all of those different things come together. And yeah, I mean, again, some people, I meet amazing designers who are really good at systems, others that are really good at typography, and I've always been the red thread that just likes to connect it all together because I'm passionate about all of them, and maybe not really, really, really good at any one thing, just more connecting the dots.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like where I'm at, because I know intuitively, like in my, not to be like lame about it, but I know intuitively in my heart that this is all kind of coming, all the worlds, the photography, the film, all those classes I took like in college and stuff like that, and also like what I do online, like the things I watch on YouTube to try and get better at, it's all kind of like culminating and coming to this place. But I'm sort of at a place now, it's like when, but I know it will probably be soon. And I know that one day I'm going to listen back to these and be like, what, like, why were you so scared? But I don't know. It is kind of nerve wracking, but I definitely, I think that also too, and tell me if you had this experience, the communication with people I think is really important, because I used to just say what people wanted me to, like what my parents wanted me to say. And I think this is valuable for people that are trying to explain, because that's one of the questions I always get. Like my parents think that I'm, like you mentioned, like they're into fine art and painting and stuff, and their parents, want them to, like, they have to kind of justify it. But
Yeah.
I think recently I've just communicated with them. It's like, hey, look, I'm having, like if you could meet the people that I was talking to, one day I'm just gonna have like a big dinner table with all the people that I look up to, like yourself and Lee and all these different people. I'm like, see, mom and dad, like this is who I'm hanging out with. Eventually, I'm running the right circles. You just got to give me time. It's gonna happen.
I mean, you
But
could talk to my mum and try and tell her what I do. I mean, she's still trying to make sense of it 20 years later. I gave her my first book, that published book, which is now worth like thousands of dollars because it was a collectible book. And she was like, just don't show your granddad. He'll never give you any money because the pictures were so naughty. And this like book that was worth about $500 back then, it's probably worth thousands, just sat collecting dust on her shelf. And
could have
she was
just stole
like,
it back and sold it on eBay.
but she's
Yeah.
always come to everything. She's always proud. She doesn't quite get it, but she knows I work pretty hard to do it, and she's proud of that, I think. So
well, I just had a TikTok comment that I said go viral, and it was because somebody was like, ask the TikTok video was like, ask your parents like what you do for a living. And I commented on there, and this is a true story. So I've been a professional DJ since I was like probably 18. I had like turntables and stuff like that. And I still do. I just did like a wedding the other night kind of thing. And my dad the other day goes, so how, and it's so funny because they always say these things when you're in this really vulnerable place. And my dad's like, so how's the disco ball thing going? I was like, Dad, this is my profession. That is insulting to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So let's hop in. This has been so much fun. I feel like we're going to be best friends. We're going to make this happen. Let's get into some practical stuff for people. So now that I'm done having my therapy session with you, thank you. I'll make sure that I Venmo you after. But practical advice for entry-level creatives looking to get a job with JKR, one of my favorite agencies. I think that JKR really makes things beautiful and amplifies the experience of like what people love about that brand and brings it like to the forefront. Like when I get Dunkin' Donuts coffee now and Baskin Robbins, I am like excited. It's like a fashion piece. It brings me joy. And it's so cool to see how you guys make brands evolve. More recently, Burger King. And then also kind of working with the startups and stuff like that. I'm just a huge fan of it. It's really good. But if people want to get a job for you, how can they go about doing that?
Everything, whether it's Dunkin' or Burger King, or even people in early stage of startups, we have a bit of a mantra there, and I never used it before I joined JKR, but whether I've drunk some JKR Kool-Aid along the way, but it is a bit of an aha moment in the idea of you've got that cheesy Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And the idea when we work on these rebrands is to go back and find, how can they be themselves? Now, it might not be like finding what's in the archives and contemporizing that. That might have been the right execution for, Duncan. It was sitting there all along, the colors. There were still modernized versions of the typefaces. They obviously dropped the donuts. There was some very big strategic things, but it was always about being themselves and what's making Dunkin'. And then when you look at like a Burger King, who, yes, we went back and in the logo exploration phase ended up being kind of looking at the most iconic point in history, which was their logo from that period. But nothing else in that brand is old. Everything else is modern. It's not a homage to the past. But the best feedback you can get about that work is, this looks like how Burger King should have always looked like. I can't even imagine what the old one looked like. That's a
perfect way of stating what you guys do. No, I don't think you're drinking the Kool-Aid. I think that's a really great way of describing it.
Yeah.
Like just if you tweak it just right, and then as somebody who loves that brand, you're like, yes, they did it.
And I mean, every agency probably has slightly different, I don't know, different ways of getting at that, or different ways to describe it. At Wolf Follows, we've always talked about what's special about you and what does the world need. So what's special about you, the heart of the brand, what it stands for, blah, blah, blah. And what does the world need? Where's the world going? Where's the future? Is it more digital? Is it more technology? Is it more lo-fi? Is it having a nostalgic moment? Is it doing this? And just understanding the trends and what the consumers want, and kind of marrying those together with the design solution. So look, everyone comes at it slightly different ways, but that's really what we're saying. So then when you think about when I start to look at candidates that might want to come to JKR, I think
Perfect
about
segue.
what's special about them. How are they showing me that they're unique and different and going to have an interesting point of view? So I'm not looking anymore, and this has definitely been something I've been working on the last like few years, judging a book by its cover, literally like, do I think that book is awesome? Every now and again you see one and you're just like, oh my God, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome.
Right.
But especially if you're coming out of college or you haven't even been to college, I don't expect your work to be like awesome on every single level. I'd like to see an idea here or there. I'd like to see your personality coming through in your work, having a point of view on the work. And I think so it's a whole new way that I look at the work. And more often than not, I want to speak to people. Like, we try and interview a lot of the people that apply to JKR, whether that's in person, on the phone, whether that's me, whether that's the CDs or the DDs or even the SDs, because we want to give people a time, because you learn so much more when you meet them and find out what the drive is and the excitement. Because I think the biggest thing about JKR is you're working obviously either on like extreme scale brands or you're working on small innovative startups, and both demand quite a lot of energy. And I think what you can be an introvert or an extrovert or any type of person at JKR, but I need to see the spark that you're going to like bring something to the project, and there's that level of energy and excitement to learn, because I'm still learning now. Yeah. Like, it's not done. You don't have to, oh, I've learned the programs, now I'm ready, or I've like learned everything about the industry, now I'm ready. You're never going to know everything. So I think just seeing that appetite and the drive and the eagerness, and then in the work, just seeing something that really reflects that person's personality. It doesn't all have to be perfect, because you're going to get the job and come and learn on the job.
I think that transfer of enthusiasm is so important, and that really helped to open up a lot of doors for me early on. Like, I remember this one time, I wasn't really qualified for the job, but like the CD wrote me back. She's coming on the podcast soon. I don't want to spoil it, but she's coming on the show soon. And it's funny, we still stay in touch. All this, she still remembers me from like 5 years ago, which is like so cool. But she messaged me back, and she's like, and I was so okay. I'm not going to start airing out my grievances, but I think it's really nice for creative directors, and I get the impression like you're somebody who would probably do something like this. It's like to just write back like a genuine thing of like how it went. Be like, sorry, like not accepting applicants at this time. Sometimes it feels very like clinic, like sort of like sterile and clinical. And she wrote me back, and she was like, look, like you're not ready really to fill this position, but your enthusiasm, like you are like a firecracker. Like your love and passion for brands is like unmatched. And if you could just get your book to be even like close to what that energy feels like, you're going to be in great shape and you're going to have a great career. And that really like meant a lot to me. I think that it's true. I kind of just need to get my book, tweak it a little bit more, and probably show more of like who I am. Cause I always kind of have it where I want to make my, cause I'll look at like the JKR website, for example, and be like, okay, I need to make my case study like this, and it has to be like this, and like that thin weight, Newhouse grotesque, you know what I mean? So
I don't think we're not expecting that though. So do know that, as I said, find your own way. But I think
I should almost just make my portfolio just a video of me screaming about my I think I should just delete my whole portfolio, just make a Squarespace website with a link to like a YouTube thing, and just like take every brand and then just be like, and this is why I love Dunkin' Donuts. Up next we have Chobani, and this is why I love it. And just be like, and if you want to hire me, I'm a subpar graphic designer. Let's work together.
Well, and like there's no, I just don't believe in the subpar or any of that type of stuff. I think, again,
yeah, but there's people out there who are crushing it though. There's people out there, I look at their portfolio and it makes me just want to like take my ball and go home.
I really couldn't use a computer. Like, I had to learn from on the job. I mean, I still design here or there and get into guidelines and probably do too much sometimes because I love it. but I am no way as fast as like how some of the team are now, and things like that. I'm actually a bit jealous when it comes to it, of how others make and create and connect everything, and everything's on the server, and how all the links work and all of that. That blows my mind. It has to be on the
Just you saying that
desktop.
gives me anxiety. I just
But
need to figure out how I could be like an
I
idea
think
guy. You know what I
I
mean?
like what you said. I like what your CD said to you, because I do it's I mean, where I can, I definitely always try and respond if stuff comes to me personally too. Um, and rejection is one of the hardest things to take. I mean, as I said, like when I got that internship to getting even, yeah, well, the second internship when I got to Browns, I mean, I'd probably sent hundreds of letters. And it's interesting, like I was judging an awards the other week with a creative director that I sent a letter to many times. I didn't say it to him, but he never replied
But I
once to
wanted
me.
to.
Yeah, we're not going to go there, but I was just like sitting in the same digital room judging with him, thinking, yeah, you
Yeah,
never.
so I got a seat at the table. ECD at JKR, bro. No, sorry.
But it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it made me want it more, and
yeah,
you find your own way. But I think I do want people to always know that it doesn't matter what your personality type is, introvert or extrovert. You and I probably both shout from the rooftops. Others have a much quieter, but equally authentic, and it's being authentic and it's being yourself, and have just as much time. And you have to have teams that are really mixed and diverse and of all different personalities. And I think it's just equally as important to take the time for the quieter ones too, so they're often sitting on best ideas.
to get a word in. Yeah. Well, it's actually really been encouraging today to speak with you, and I feel like I'm not one of those people who's like, and everything happens for a reason, because like clearly, you know, a quick glance around at like humanity in general will be like, not everything, but you know, I think sometimes people like come across your path, and I think that talking to you today has been really special because I see a lot of myself in you and your social sensibilities and like your enthusiasm for stuff, and I think I have to and this is kind of like what I was trying to get at before. There was sort of this like momentum building, and then COVID happened, and then um, I'm so extroverted, and I have such an imagination, but then sometimes that same imagination that lends itself to creating also can imagine about all the different ways in which maybe I'm not like cut out for something kind of thing. Like it's like a double-edged sword. And I think it's just like so cool to talk to someone like yourself and realize it's like, oh, she's just like you. And I feel like during COVID, I almost like convinced myself that it's like, nah, you're probably not cut out for it. You just like, you know, that little voice in your head just it's like, you should
Yeah.
fucking quit. You should quit, dude. You should
Oh,
just be a photographer
do
and
you
just do
think
it.
we all don't have that voice? Like
Oh
we
no,
all
I know.
we all have that voice, whatever,
It was
and
loud though
good
recently.
day. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty exceptional, unusual circumstances. So
Yeah.
everyone's working in their living rooms or their bedrooms or housemates, and I mean, it's yeah, we've all played with our demons a little bit over the last couple of years. I have
Yeah.
my dog for my talking. Like I get up in the morning, right, I'm going to brush my teeth. How are you? Like talking to my dog, just like otherwise.
Slowly going crazy. Yeah. But
But
I think it's
design
good
is a
though.
crooked path. That's your takeaway. Like your career is a crooked path. This industry is kind of a crooked path. Coming up with the solution for a client is a crooked path. Whether you come up with it in the shower, whether it takes you weeks to get to the answer because you're just like you push and you push. I almost love that bit where you can't actually get it and you're in like almost extreme pain of like trying to get the answer, but
Yes.
the amount of interesting stuff that comes out at those like most craziest moments is just really interesting. I just
Yeah.
it's not like a perfect job, and it's not like a perfect industry. It's we're creative, so it's all a little like up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I kind of wish that I just had some sort of, and I know that these are all incredibly difficult jobs that I'm about to I'm not trying to take anything away, but like, you know, sometimes I sort of wish that I was just like, I wanted to be like a policeman and I just like went and like, you know, like got a job, you know what I mean? And like got a pension and stuff like that. But in my heart of hearts, I don't
right
want
now.
that. What happened?
Anything else but that job
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah. No, but like, you know what I mean? Like, because I used to
Yeah.
want to be like an FDNY, like New York City fireman. And I was like, that was like my dream. And I still a little bit like when I see them like going through like midtown traffic, it's like bah, 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 bah. It's like coming down the road. I'm like, oh, I fucked up. I should have been a fireman. But that's not me. You know what I mean? But it's yeah, it's good to talk to people like yourself and just realize that it's all gonna be all right. I'm gonna look back on these podcasts one day. At this point, I'm just like burning it down at this point because I feel like I used to worry about what people would think, but I think that they're in my irrational thinking. I'm sure there's people out there, and maybe it's just an incredibly egocentric way of thinking, but there's definitely people out there that are really scared because it's fucking scary. You know, it's scary to be like, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna be unemployed? Like, am I? am
Well,
I
yeah,
gonna work till I'm 100?
no, yeah, and finding the thing, and finding the agency or finding the brand or whatever that you feel really comfortable in. It's yeah, it's a journey, and I get that, and it is so. I remember that I was equally as scared when I was like 6 months into an internship, and then I remember, as I said, like that first project and September the 11th happened, and then one of the worst recessions happened, and we all took pay cuts, and I was already on the lowest salary like you could possibly imagine, and my granddad had to help pay some of my train fare to get to work because I still wanted to go to work. So it was like you got the job, and then you got like pay removed because of like the world recession and the circumstances. But I believed in it, and I believed in my team and my boss, and we were going to get back there, and we did get back there and got better and better. But it was like it's a crazy industry, but a really cool one, and lots of different paths you can take. Like, you know, I always think about that with my brothers. Like, my brother worked for Gordon Ramsay at Hospital Row. He worked in Paris as a chocolatier, but he opened a shop in our hometown called Saffron Walden in Essex in England, and he's so happy. Works with my brother.
Oh my
A
god.
small local business. Well, it
I'm
turns out
picturing like Gene Wilder and Willie and
well,
like
it's
the
a little
candy
bit
man.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but Jamie Oliver's like their number one fan. If he posts something when he goes to the shop, because it's near where he lives locally, they sell out of that the next day. And it's just like, it's all relative too. Like, do you want to be at the best, what you know you perceive as the best agencies, or is there an agency out there that you're going to make work out that you're going to be super happy? I never really worried about that. I mean, Wolf Hollins and Chobani and JKR, and it all sounds awesome, and I know that seems like really up there for people who look at design from the outside or on their journey on the way up, and they're like seeing what we do. But I was equally happy when I was at a smaller design agency making art books for photographers, or, you know, working on hotels and restaurant branding. And that was all my journey. I love working at the V&A. Like, there's so many different paths in design you can take. They don't all have to be what is the hotshot agency of what people might think of the moment. We're going to be on our own journey, and JKR has been around for 30 years. I mean, it's 20, yeah, yeah, we're in our first 10 years. We're the teenager version of JKR, and the London are much more grown up than us, and much more
that's cool.
got their shit together.
You're the perfect youthful spirit for that. But thank you so much for doing this. It's been so much fun. I hope that I wasn't too emo, but I definitely am just like, I want to talk about these things, and I feel like I always want this podcast to just be a conversation at scale, and sometimes it's not as buttoned up as I necessarily would have wanted to. But then I also, if I was to talk to you, you know, if we were to like run into each other somewhere, this is probably the existential breakdown that I would have with you. So where can people find you online? What's the best place to get in touch? JKR Global on Instagram. Is that the website as well?
Yes.com. And yeah, I have an Instagram. I don't have a website. It's JKR. It's always where I work.
Exactly. Good answer.
And if you want my Instagram, you can look for me.
Okay, cool. And I know that I had reached out and I spoke to the CEO of JKR a couple months ago, and, we're planning on eventually talking. I still want to talk to her as well, but
To Sarah, oh, she would
yeah,
love it.
yeah, I know that she's really busy and stuff like that, and the audacity for me to ask someone like Sarah to come on the show. But
Oh no,
you got to go for the top. You know what I'm saying? You got to go for it.
Sarah would love it, and Sarah can tell you what a
I don't want to
journey.
step on any toes. I just want to put
No,
that
no,
out.
no. Her journey of coming from JKR London to coming to New York and starting from scratch is an incredible story. So you should definitely talk to
Yes.
her, because yeah, she's very special. She's only ever worked for JKR, so she's got a very, but every day she comes at it like it was her first day. She's got all of that energy, all of that optimism.
Yeah.
And excitement for what we do, and it's really contagious, so you should definitely talk to her.
I definitely will. I'm kind of on a mission to talk to all the big CEOs. I had Sean Lyons, who's the global CEO of RGA. I had Joanne Chan, who's the CEO of Turner Duckworth. I'm just
Amazing.
what's so funny is that they're the most normal of all the people, and which is hilarious because then I got these fucking like ACDs who come on here are like, oh, excuse, do you know who I am? It's
Well,
like, dude, I
I
just
mean,
had like a CEO on, and they're cool.
I think you know more about JKR and your love for it than I even did. I didn't even really know
Oh, my
JKR.
knowledge runs deep. Y'all get me in for the interview. Disregard my
We're
portfolio.
interviewing you, but it was just like I didn't really know about them until I was at How Design and I saw Tosh talk, and I was like, I'd seen these brands when I judged awards and things like that, but because again, the things I look at, which is more probably arts and photography and we're like film and music and stuff, I'm not always like up to speed on every perfect design, like all the gossip and all the ins and out on the design industry. And I was like, holy, like this is like amazing. And then a
Yeah,
few months later I got a call. And
that's
I was like, and
that's
that's
so
because he
good.
gave me an award there, I think, so that was interesting. But it, and that all was based on me joining, was based on relationships. Like I really liked him and Sarah, the
Yeah.
like I was like, I could work with these people, I could make some awesome stuff. They're going to create the conditions for me to be me and do what I do best. And
Mhm.
it's always been, the conversations with them are always like that. What are you
Yeah.
doing that's getting in the way? What's like bugging you? What can we remove? What can we help you with? How can we create the path so you do what you do best? And I, we share the same visions, and I think
Yes.
that's like for the work and for the people and for the team. And yeah, you should definitely talk to them.
Okay, good. I'm gonna talk to all of them. It's gonna be perfect. I appreciate you being here. It's been really fun.
Likewise, really
Cool.
fun.